Fourth grade lesson 3.1 is multiply by tens. And so again, we're going to see some, take some of the pieces that we've been covering, build upon it, and see how we can start multiplying with some two-digit to two-digit numbers. What are some tricks we can do if there's a way to make it easier? That's what this lesson's going to show us. So our essential question is, what strategies can you use to multiply by tens? And you've been using strategies all along, breaking things apart, expanding things, the commutative property, flipping them around, associative property, regrouping them. So that's what we're talking about when we say what strategies can we use. Animation for a computer-drawn cartoon requires about 20 frames per second. How many frames would need to be drawn for a 30-second cartoon? We've read the question, now let's underline the question it's asking us. They want us to say how many frames would need to be drawn for a 30-second cartoon. Circle the information they gave us. We know that in 20, they do need 20 frames per 1 second, singular second. So 20 frames for 1 second. We can draw a picture of that, 20 frames for 1 second, and then we need to do that 30 times. So at this point, we're recognizing, oh, I would have to do repeated addition of 20 over and over and over again, 30 times. Shortcut for repeated addition is multiplication. So I'm going to have 20 times 30. They point out to us, I've blown past this kind of fast, so they point out to us the phrase 20 frames per second, singular, not seconds, plural, but singular second, means 20 frames are needed for each 1 second of animation. So they say, how does this help you know what operation to use? In 1 second, we get 20 frames. In another second, we get 20 frames. In another second, we get 20 frames. Repeated addition. So we could put repeated addition there. Is multiplication. And we can use some of the tricks we've been using before. We have 20 times 30 here. And we can think of the 30 as 3 tens. So this can be 20 times 3 tens. And we remember from our previous lessons that 20 times 30, well, I'll do the 2 times 3, which is 6 with the 0 on the end. And that's 60 tens, or 600. Another way is to use the associative property. The associative property, it states that you can group factors in different ways and get the same product. So we use parentheses to group the factors, and then we multiply first. So you can think of 30 as 3 times 10, like right there. So we have 20 times 30, and instead they said 20 times 3 times 10, because 3 times 10 is still 30. Then we're going to regroup. Instead of doing the 3 times 10 first, we're going to do the 20 times 30 first. So they just moved these parentheses over and said, I want to do this first. 20 times 3, remember that's 2 times 3 is 6 with 1 0 there. So we would get 60, and then we still have this times 10. And 60 times 10, well, 6 times 1 is 6, and 2 zeros makes that 600. So 600 frames would need to be drawn. And they mentioned to compare the number of zeros in each factor to the number of zeros in the product. Okay, so here's our factors. 20 is a factor, and 30 is a factor that built 600. There's 2 zeros in the factors, and look at the answer, 2 zeros in the answer. So what do we notice? We notice that there's the same amount of zeros ending up on the end of our answer. So some other ways that we could do this too, there's always several paths, or not always, but usually several paths in math that you can figure things out. They say if we wanted to do 15 times 20, we could use number lines to help us with that. We could split this 20 into 2 times 10. And we're going to do 15 times both of those. Okay, and then I'm going to choose to regroup this associative property to do the 15 times 2 first, and then I will do that times 10 part afterwards. So I'm needing 15 2 times, and I've got this to 30. So I don't see a 15 on there, but I notice it's counting by twos, 2, 4, 6. So that means that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. So 15 is going to be right in between 14, right? 14 and 16. 14, 15, 16. I'm going to put that on there. All right. And so the first 15 is going to be right there. The second 15, well, there's 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's my second 15. So we find out that 15 times 2 is 30. Now I can take a look at this. Look at this is counting by 20s. So in between each of these is a 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And remember, I still needed to multiply this by 10. So 10 times 30, I'm going to do 10 30 times, or 30 10 times might be better. 30 10 times. So there's 30, then 10, 20, 30. That's 2 times. I better mark this or I'm going to get confused. There's 30, then 10, 20, 30 again at 60, then 10, 20, 30 again, 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 and again, and again, and again. So that's another way you could do it if you want. Or if we were at the point where we had done 15 times 2, this is a skill that you had done before. We could have done this the way we were doing the previous lesson. And you learned how to carry over with that. So we would do 2 times 5 is 10. And 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. And then we would do 30 times 10. Remember in that first page where they talked about the 2 zeros? Okay, hold on to those 2 zeros. 3 times 1 is 3. And 2 zeros on the end is 300. Finally, they give us another strategy. All of our brains work different, so they're just helping everybody's brain understand like what's going on. So we can use a halving, cutting it in half, and doubling strategy. So we're doing 14 times 30. We can find half of 14 to maybe make this simpler. What is half of 14? Or 14 divided by 2. When you cut a number in half, you're dividing it by 2. Half of 14 is 7. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Then we can do 7 times 30. We know 7 is half of 14. We'll fix that and double it back up later. But let's do 7 times 30. And in chapter 2, we learned to go ahead and do the 7 times 0 is 0. And then the 7 times 3 is 21. So it's 210. But we had cut 14 in half to get 7. So now that we have, it was an easier number to multiply. That's why we did it. Now, though, we've got to make up for that. So if we cut it in half, now we've got to make up for it by doubling it, or multiplying by 2. So 210 doubled, or multiplied by 2, which is the same thing. 0 times 2 is 2. I'm sorry, 0. 2 times 1 is 2. And 2 times 2 is 4. So the final answer is 420. All right, so they want us to try this one, use mental math. This isn't using mental math here. This one is using writing it down math. And so we're going to try and do mental math on this one to figure this one out. And there were several strategies that they did for us. We have 12 times 40. And there's a lot of things that we can do to break these apart and try to put them back together again in our heads. My brain wants to cut 40 in half to 20, because I feel like I can do the 12 times 20 in my head probably, because I know that, I'll show you what I mean. I'm cutting 40 in half to 20, and then I'll double it afterwards because I cut it in half. So I know that 2 times 12 is 24 with a 0 on the end. That makes 240. And because I halved this, I cut this in half or divided by 2, I'm just going to go ahead and double that now. Double of 0 is 0, double of 4 is 8, and double of 2 is 4. So I would end up with 480. That's how my brain wanted to do it in my head. The lesson had shown us a couple of different ways. Okay. They want us to use place value now to find the same thing. So as I look at this, I have 12 times 40. I can rewrite 40 as 4 tens. That's the place value, right? And so I would do 12 times 4 tens. So I'll do the 12 times 4. Now that I know how to multiply double digit by a single digit, 4 times 2 is 8. And 4 times 1 is 4. And that is going to be 48 tens, right? Because we were doing the place value. So if I'm going to write this as 48 tens, it would look like that, 480. So that's another way you could do that. All right, with all those methods thrown at you, one of them probably seemed more appealing than the others. So they want you to find 20 times 27 and then tell which method you chose and explain what happened in each step. So you can pause it and try a method. When you replay it though, I may have chosen a different method than you, but if we came out with the same answer, both of our methods worked. So try a method. Any of the ones that are on page 105 or 106, the one that you felt like made the most sense, pause and try it. Okay, I think for me, I'm going to do that halving method again, where you cut it in half and then double it afterwards, because I'm looking at this 20, and 20 cut in half or divided by 2 is 10, and I could really multiply by tens really easily. So I'm going to call that, and so here's me explaining my steps. I'm going to cut it in half and make it 10 times 27. And I know that that is 270. Now, because I cut this in half, I now need to make up for that by doubling my answer. My answer is 270, and I need to multiply that by 2 to double it. That is 0. 7 times 2 is 14. And 2 times 2 is 4, plus the 1 carryover is 5. 540 is the answer I got. And I got that by halving the 20 into a 10, finding the answer quick, and then doubling the answer here to get the final product of 540. And these practice problems on the Sharon Show are going to be kind of happening the same way. You're going to know which method you liked to manipulate these numbers best. I'm going to try the different ones on each of these, so you can try it your way. You may take a different path than me, but we'll end up with the same answer. So go ahead and pause it and see what you get for number 2. Give it a try. All right, now that you've tried it, I am going to use the place value method here because that is 110. And if I multiply that by 12, 1 times 12 is 12. And then I've got the tens. And 12 tens is the same as 120. I probably didn't even really need to go through those steps. You probably notice now 12 times 1 is going to be 12 with 1 0 on the end. It's really similar to when we were doing the multiplication in lesson 2. So there is the answer for that, however you may have gotten to it. Go ahead and try number 3. For this one, I think I'm going to use the associative property. Well, first, I'm going to break up the 20 to a 2 times 10, and I'll multiply all of that by 20. So I broke this up to 2 times 10 multiplied by 20. Now I want to do this 20 times 2 first, because in the previous lesson I know how to do 1-digit by 2-digit numbers. So I regrouped associative property. All right, So I just moved my parentheses from hugging here to hugging here. 20 times 2, that is 2 times 2 is 4 with a 0 on the end. That is 40. And 40 times 10, 4 times 1 is 4 with 2 zeros on it. That is 400. Did you get 400 no matter which method you used? Good job. Okay, let's look at number 4. Think of a path you're going to take to make that easy to calculate. Go ahead and do it. Pause the video and then play when you have your answer. Okay, I think for me, I'm going to do 4 times 10 to make the 40, and then do all of that times 24. Then I'm going to commutative property this one. I'm going to flip these around to be 10 times 4 times 24. Something I kind of would normally do in my head. I'm just showing you on paper. Then I'm going to regroup the 10 times 4 times 24. That way I'm ready to do this first, 24 times 4, and because in chapter 2 I picked up doing that multiplication so well, I know how to do that. 4 times 4 is 16 with the carryover, and 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9, so that's 96. And 96 times 10, you're probably real comfortable with that now. 96 times 1 is 96 with 1 0 on the end. My answer is 960. You may have taken a different route, but you probably got to 960, hopefully. And finally, let's look at number 5. Think of the path you want to take to get there. Pause the video and try it. Play the video when you have it. All right, for me, I think I'm going to go with the place value one again. This is 6 tens times 11, and 11 times 6. We do 6 times 1 is 6, and then we do 6 times 1 over here is 6. That comes out to 66 tens, and that tens is a 1 0, right? So I get 660. So that's the answer we got. You might have taken a different path, but ideally you ended up with the same product that I did. So that's what this lesson is. It will take some practice. It might take more practice than this. And so if you're needing extra help on this, then we'll work on it extra in class until you're feeling comfortable enough to take the do the homework assignment or the class assignment on Think Central.